So with this update, North Carolina also got a buff. This thing now has slightly better Sigma, going from 2.0 Sigma all the way up to 2.05. You don't know what Sigma is? It's the tendency of the shells to go towards the center of your dispersion circle. That's a fancy way of saying it's really about how good the grouping looks most of the time. And this should help it be a little more consistent. That at least is the goal. North Carolina traditionally has been pretty consistent for me, but I actually hadn't played it in a very, very long time. So this is a nice excuse to play it again and see how it works. And that's a pretty nice looking grouping right off the bat. Broadside cruiser for salvo. Yeah, we're expecting a little more from that, I would say. One of the reasons that I think North Carolina is so interesting in this game is it's such a vanilla battleship. Honestly, one of the early battleships that I recommend people play if they are wanting to learn the typical standard vanilla battleship playstyle. It is reasonably high up in the tech tree, so it's no easy task to get to tier 8, but it's not nearly as hard as tier 10. And this ship really is that vanilla battleship in World of Warships. Pretty solid guns, good firepower and accuracy. The reload, not too long, not the fastest in the world. It's reasonably tanky, and the concealment, most importantly, is actually decent for a battleship, allowing you to use this hit and run kind of playstyle. That grouping there looks really, really nice. So that's going to be the thing to look out for this video, is what do the groupings look like? And I'll be honest with you, again, hoping for a little more there. We're definitely looking for Citadels, I won't lie. That is, of course, what we want as a battleship, holding our salvo for those broadside shots. We'd like to be rewarded with Citadels. Now, this might be the result of the changes in the game over the last several years, but I was a little disappointed playing through the North Carolina here a few times. This game is still going to be very, very good. Just I think Citadels have become a little bit more rare than when I was really playing the North Carolina a lot. That was several years ago. We have more Citadels below water these days, ships getting skinnier Citadels as well. It's making it a little bit more difficult. Of course, we could also be getting a little unlucky, or my aim might be a little off as well. The right play there, of course, was to shoot at that cruiser, finishing him off. This is more of a greedy play, going after the North Carolina again. Really just trying to test out that upgraded dispersion and trying to hit some big salvos. That's really what I wanted out of the North Carolina. The downside, of course, of this ship at tier 8, even though it is quite powerful, it's the shell velocity. So that was one of the weaknesses, but it did help to learn North Carolina's lead, and that way a lot of other battleships, especially as you got to higher tiers, were a little bit easier to lead. And good grouping there at range. 2 hits in onto the turrets. I guess we'll take that. Now, is this Iowa going to come out flat broadside to us? That sure would be a good test of things, right? Close range. Better Sigma should be helping us do some pretty devastating damage to this Iowa as he's coming out. Again, a greedy play here is to go after the Iowa. If this destroyer is going to come around the corner as well, probably should go after the DD that's more likely to YOLO you with torps, and then just angle to the Iowa. But we're going for the big plays here, trying to hit these big devastating salvos. And we don't get a lot. Definitely was disappointed there, especially early game. We still have 57,000 damage, still pretty good. But for the quality of shots we've been getting, the number of broadsides, I'd like to see a little bit more. And maybe that just is the way the game is these days when it comes to battleship play. Or maybe the North Carolina is just a little worse than I remembered it. But if this is the way the ship has been, maybe it's not the best ship to be going for in the early game or early days of trying to figure out how battleships play. If it's not as consistent as I thought, because that was really the reason that I liked to recommend this ship. I really enjoyed that it didn't have a lot of gimmicks outside of just being a relatively consistent battleship that would hit things pretty hard when they made a mistake. And that really is the essence of battleships in this game, in my opinion. And that's one of the reasons that North Carolina was such a great recommendation in the past for learning battleships. If you're going to learn on something like the German line, well, you're going to get dispersion like that a lot more often. And it won't be quite as satisfying. And really the best thing about learning on a ship like North Carolina, or any other vanilla-style battleship in this game, is then you can form that foundation of good practices while playing a battleship, and then move over to some of the more gimmick-heavy lines, and still have a decent foundation to build off of when you do have some gimmicks to rely on. Things like the Schlieffen line giving you some insane secondaries at closer ranges. Things like some of the British battleships giving you some really good HE. Their AP is still quite good. North Carolina here, broadside enough that he should take some pretty big hits. And we land 1 shell out of 6. I'll be honest with you, at this point, really was starting to question whether North Carolina needed more of a buff than it already got. Maybe 3.0 Sigma. Would that even be enough to save some of these salvos? Feels a little bit bad. To be honest with you, though, this is a bit of a tinfoil hat theory, but it feels like that just has to be an aiming bug. Some of these salvos, the way the dispersion is going, it looks completely unlocked on some of these close-range, broadside targets, hardly doing any damage, not even able to hit a North Carolina there. I don't know for a fact that these are bugs in the game and the aiming system. There we somehow get 5 bounces off of a Tirpitz. I don't know how that happens. Good grouping, though, obviously. We managed to precisely hit not his superstructure and only his angled bow or something like that. But the way some of this dispersion feels, it's just a little bit too bad to really be a North Carolina, especially one with 2.05 Sigma. That really is a big factor in how good the groupings look. That's one of the reasons why things like the Italian battleships look so bad. Even though they have 16 guns at tier 10, the Sigma's atrocious, and that's why it looks like a shotgun every time you're shooting. This ship with good Sigma, we should be getting decent dispersion. And, well, the Baltimore there did turn out, so fair enough. It seems like the grouping should definitely be better, and that maybe there is some bugs. And that is a theory, I believe, that a lot of the community members do hold, myself included. But I don't believe Wargaming has ever actually confirmed or denied that there are aiming bugs in the game. Perhaps not in their best interest to do confirm a bug exists that they don't know how to fix. It's been in the game for long enough that they might not know what to do with it, unfortunately. Broadside Buffalo here, if we can get some spotting, that would be really, really good. The slow arcs, are really, really nice for shooting over islands. Unfortunately for us, I was just a little too quick, and the amazing grouping that came out of our front 2 guns was eaten up by the island. But I suppose if we only are going to hit 1 shell, I'll take a Citadel. Surprisingly, that is the first Citadel of our match, even though we have been shooting at a lot of broadsides, almost exclusively, in fact. Finally got one. 93,000 damage already, feels pretty good. Our team's got this one reasonably well in hand here. Going back to the main base was a decision I made based around the enemy team potentially being able to push through that 7, 8, 9 line. Also gives us another angle of attack, right? If the enemy team is going to defend from their island cover there, if they decide to poke out, we should be able to punish them. 6 hits out of 9, unfortunately 5 overpens. That's kind of the idea behind Citadel's overpanning a lot more. Maybe that's another reason that I feel like I'm doing less consistent damage in the North Carolina here. That cruiser at the very beginning of the match also seemingly taking a lot of Citadels. We missed a few more shells in that one, but hopefully this time we will be able to land a better salvo in. And sure enough, we do. Another 5 hits. This time we finally do get a Citadel. And on this one, 4 full pens and only 1 overpen. Not sure why that changed, but there you go. We finally did get some damage in. Broadside Bismarck at 11 kilometers. And remember, it's the grouping we're looking at here. That's what should be pretty good here. Bismarck's a pretty big target. Flat broadside like this should be doing some pretty massive damage. And, well, the grouping is just kind of okay. The damage, very good. 20,000 damage feels pretty good. 6 full pens there feels quite nice. But that didn't actually look like that good a grouping out of the main guns. Just happened to land enough full pens all along his broadside there. 146,000 damage, like I said, pretty good game. High cal, Confederate, pretty decent here in a North Carolina, especially as mid-tier like this, not seeing as many tier 10 opponents where the HP pools tend to skyrocket. So 146 into a tier 7, 8, 9 game feels pretty nice. That said, though, I did feel a little disappointed, a little let down by some of these groupings. You'll have to let me know if you've been playing your North Carolina since the 12.5 update last week. Have you felt it being any more accurate? 0.05 Sigma is pretty subtle, so maybe that's the reason I haven't felt like it's been that amazing. Here we've got a Kagero at close range. 3 hits out of 9. Pretty small DD, so I guess that's fine. And then we just have the submarine left to take out. Swapping over to the HE, of course, trying to get some splash damage in. And grouping, it's actually not bad there, a little vertical. 7 hits out of 9, keeping in mind that that HE splash damage will give you more hits, especially if you land just within the vicinity of a submarine. But nearly 160,000 damage is a pretty good game still. I think I can't deny that. But just feeling a little disappointed in the groupings. Maybe that is just a general feeling I have around all battleships. Perhaps my expectations are too high. It's still a good game. I just feel like I should be a little more consistent against some of these broadside ships I was facing. As for the build here on the North Carolina, it's a very standard battleship build. Again, another one of the reasons that I did traditionally love recommending North Carolina to people who wanted to learn how to play battleships. The grind up to it's a little painful in New Mexico, Colorado. But once you're here, again, you got a very vanilla battleship playstyle that I assumed would be consistent enough to show you what shots are good to take, which ones aren't. Maybe have to reconsider that, but a very vanilla build. It also kind of develops your standard battleship commander. Very good things to look for here. On the equipment side of things, range mod is certainly not necessary on a ship like this. It's already very difficult to hit targets at 23.5 kilometers, which I think is the normal range. All this does is very minorly improve our dispersion. Some people did some data mining several years ago now at this point, and found that as you increase the range of your guns, you got slightly better dispersion. I, of course, wanted to give North Carolina the best possible chance for good dispersion. And, well, this is the best game that I managed to come up with. The rest were actually, had worse dispersion most of the time than this one. So, yeah, disappointed, I think, would be the best way to describe how I'm feeling about the NC right now. And battleships as a whole, maybe my expectations are just crazy high at the moment, but I feel like they just lack too much consistency. Although that might come down to me playing more destroyers and cruisers and having a little more control and consistency out of those. Battleships inherently just are inconsistent, I guess. That's kind of how the alpha damage thing works. Again, let me know what you think in the comments down below. North Carolina, 12.5 dispersion, Sigma specifically update. Have you been playing it? Is it working for you? Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.